everyone, and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. Well, let's get right into it today. As you can see from the scarf, we're going to be talking a little bit about soccer. One of the big things going around in town in the St. Louis area is the possibility down the road of maybe getting an MLS team. We're going to kind of discuss some of the headbutting issues that seem to go along with that, and we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the transfers that have happened here recently that are kind of note towards the MLS side, also one on the international side as well. But let's get right into the main topic. One of the big things, obviously, there's a lot to discuss with the possibility of MLS maybe coming to St. Louis down the road. It's still years away. Even if they awarded us a team right here, right now, it wouldn't happen until probably about 2020 or later, given the timetable that everything is going on right now. But the possibility being there is interesting in of it itself. But what I do want to talk about are these two warring factions that seem to kind of rear their ugly head. Now, before I do that, let me preface this of saying that I know that the vast majority of people are in the middle ground. They're completely sane about the whole thing. They're completely open to the idea of MLS, but they want to support St. Louis FC, and it's kind of this nice middle ground. But you have these two very vocal, very passionate sides that are on one side or the other, and perhaps needlessly so. So let's talk a little bit about that. With the one side, you have people who are just like, no, St. Louis FC is all we ever need. I'm perfectly fine if they stay in the USL. I'm supporting my local team. I don't need anything more than that. And then you have, of course, the other people that are just on the other side of the equation. They're like, I don't care what's going on. I don't care if we have an indoor soccer team. I don't care if we have an outdoor soccer team. I'm only going to support it if we have MLS because I only support things at the highest level. Both sides are a little bit short-sighted, and they need to kind of come together to make sure that anything that is possible in the future stays possible. Now, you have the one side that, of course, is saying that we need to support St. Louis FC, and they're absolutely correct, and I do that myself. My wife and I have season tickets, and we plan to have season tickets as long as St. Louis FC is the main attraction or the only attraction. But there are these few people that are over here on this side that kind of take this argument that they don't need anything more because they almost like this kind of mentality to where it's like, we were there first and we were the ones that were kind of supporting it from the very beginning, and we don't want something else because that's not what we got accustomed to, that's not what we built and what we started. And to me, that's a little bit short-sighted, because if you have the opportunity to have a professional top league franchise, why wouldn't you want that? And some of the arguments that I've seen, and they're not necessarily arguments against an MLS team, but some of the arguments that I've seen made online are that, well, you can go to your local soccer pub or whatever, and you'll get to meet the general manager, and you'll get to hang out with the owners and kind of have actual conversations and actual interactions with them and the players as well. And the whole idea is that if you had an MLS franchise, you wouldn't get that because you have a billionaire owner as opposed to a millionaire owner, and the players are a little bit more aloof, and the general manager is stuck in an office somewhere that you never really get to see unless it's on the local news. And I get that idea, but I don't necessarily subscribe to that, because the benefits of having an MLS team are good for the city. Now, I flat out admit that I do not live within the city limits, and I know a lot of people that don't. That are still kind of making this argument, but the benefits of having an MLS team is you would have most likely a downtown stadium, unless land could be bought cheaper out in the county or West County or something like that, perhaps even over in Illinois. I wouldn't support that idea as much, but I digress. But the idea of it being downtown would be beneficial, especially I like this kind of Union Station idea where you get Market Street, basically kind of being one of the best sports streets in all of America, because then you'd have the MLS stadium, then you have Scott Trade, and then Busch Stadium on past that, and it's beneficial to the city. You get people down there, you get people kind of grouping together, going to their favorite spots beforehand, restaurants, bars, what have you, putting money into the city and jobs into the city. The St. Louis FC right now plays in Fenton, so that's not really benefiting the city in and of itself right away, and it's not necessarily benefiting the county either. But again, you have this kind of snobbish mentality of like, oh, well, we were here first, and we're just going to support this, and this is all we ever really need because we like it local, and we like having the local players, and you're not necessarily going to get St. Louis players at the MLS level. I could do a whole show on the fact of that's a silly idea in and of itself, but anyway, you have that. But then you have the stupid idea over here where you got a lot of snobs over on this side as well. They're like, well, we only want to support the sports at the highest absolute level, which is a silly idea, because you have your MLS snobs, which are thumbing their nose at a USL team being in the area. But then even if we had an MLS team, then you get the Euro snobs who are putting their nose up in the air saying, well, oh, I only like it at the highest level, and I'm only going to support English teams or European teams where they play at the absolute highest level. Well, those people need to kind of get over themselves, because quite frankly, as much as I enjoy, I'm a Liverpool fan, which might say something about me in and of itself, but they are my team in England, and then AC Milan is my team in Italy. I don't necessarily have a Spanish team. In Germany, I kind of go back and forth. But those are my two main teams. But that's not to say that I don't support local soccer. No, it's not quite the same, but you're never going to get quite the same here in America. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. You're at least supporting something that's right here in your hometown. And whether it be USL, whether it be MLS, or what have you, there's nothing wrong with going to a stadium, watching a live game, supporting them on the road when they're on TV, and growing the support right here, right in front of your own eyes. Because I saw a great picture posted online just here today, or I believe it was yesterday actually, to where it was a picture and it showed a few people sitting on a couch watching soccer on TV, and it's not the same as seeing a stadium full of rabid fans going crazy for that overtime victory that St. Louis FC had in the cup match, and it was just an absolutely electric atmosphere. Now you take that and you take that idea, that general premise, and you get 5,000 people versus 20,000 people, and it could be even better. And that's why there's this silly mentality, well, I'll only support things if it's MLS. No, you need to go support St. Louis FC, because that is one of the big keys towards getting an MLS franchise. Say what you will about the MLS as a league, but the leaders there are looking at the areas that are trying to apply for MLS advancement, or just trying to get a franchise in general. And if they have a lower level team, they're looking at whether or not that is being supported, because if you can support it at the lower level, there's no reason to say that they won't support at the higher level. It's not as easy to just say, well, there's nothing there right now, so let's just give them something and hope, because that's not the stage that they're at right now. So there's this huge area of middle ground that these people need to come together, because the argument isn't just a black and white issue. There's no reason to say that you're not supporting St. Louis FC if you're thinking about the possibility of an MLS franchise. I would love to have an MLS franchise in St. Louis. I would love the ownership group of St. Louis FC to make that transition if and when that opportunity becomes available. Now, I don't know all the logistics of something like that, so it might not work out, but I would love that to just kind of move up, because they've done a great job here. It'll be interesting to see this coming season whether they can put an actual winner on the field, but I do believe in the progress that they are trying to make as a soccer team as a whole, but we'll see what they do on the actual on-field product. But on the flip side, the people over here need to realize that they do need to support something lower, because St. Louis, regardless of sport, seems to have this bad mentality because they've wasted some great junior hockey teams, minor league hockey teams. They've kept the baseball, but just barely, which is surprising, especially as good as the Cardinals have been. But there's this bad mentality in St. Louis to where they only want to support something if it's at the absolute highest level. Well, there's always always a level that's going to be higher when it comes to soccer. So you need to support what you have right now, and then people can build on that if given the opportunity. So everybody needs to come together, find that middle ground, and kind of stop warring with each other, because it's ultimately pointless. There's nothing wrong with people over here saying they want an MLS team because they don't necessarily care for the USL, but there's nothing wrong with them going to see the USL because I think they would enjoy it. It's an enjoyable product. Obviously, you would like to see a little bit higher level on the field, but you take what you can get. And if St. Louis FC can put a winner on the field, I think you'll get more people out there. They already did a great job of selling out a lot of games last season. Now they need to start transitioning that into the standings, and it'll be interesting to see if they can do that. But everybody needs to kind of come together, because nothing can push forward if everybody is not kind of in that middle ground. Talking about that, let's move on to some of the transfer deadline deals that were kind of made in regards to some of the local sides, not necessarily St. Louis in and of itself, but MLS and what have you. Matt Miazga going to Chelsea after being part of the United States program, and obviously New York Red Bulls. There's again these kind of warring factions, one saying that it's too early, he's going to waste his time over there, he's going to sit the bench, he's not going to get any playing time, his career development is going to hit the wall. Then you have the other people on the other side that are basically saying it's a great deal and what have you. But again, there's kind of a middle ground, and I think that is a good idea. My opinion is it's nothing but good. There are obviously always going to be drawbacks, but it doesn't matter if you're from the United States or England or Italy or African nations or South America. You go to a big club like that and you're taking a risk. You're taking the risk that you might not get playing time, that you might not necessarily even get a whole lot of first squad practice time, but you're taking that risk because you believe in yourself, and obviously a club of that level is expressing interest because they believe in you to a certain degree. And coming from an American background, that is nothing but good, because the powers that be over in England and over in Europe are finally starting to thaw a little bit in their mentality towards American soccer players. And that is nothing but good for players from here going forward. Now, I'm not saying Matt Miazga is going to be this explosion of American players going over there, because America doesn't necessarily produce the kind of Lionel Messi's or Luis Suarez's or Cristiano Ronaldo's. We lack that attacking flair. But the United States can take what they do best and apply it over in Europe, because there is talent within this country. There is just a bit of a prejudice coming from Europe, and if the United States can finally break through that a little bit, if Miazga can be part of that, he may never see first team minutes with Chelsea. But the idea that a team like Chelsea, which has a scouting net around the world, thinking highly enough of this one player to sign him, whether or not they loan him out in the summer or whether or not he sees any kind of first team action from now until then, is kind of irrelevant, because the idea that a club that large, that prevalent, thinking that this kid might have what it takes to play in the Premier League is nothing but good for U.S. soccer. Quickly running through some of the other interesting ones. Jong goes to the LA Galaxy. I'm not sure if that one has been 100% finalized, but it's all but finalized. That one I'm a little bit interested in, simply because it's another midfield player. Now, I understand that the LA Galaxy got rid of Juninho, and they've also gotten rid of Omar Gonzalez, who, while as a defender, freed up a DP contract. But De Jong doesn't play the same position as Gerrard, because I understand Gerrard is further forward, more similarly to where he was early in his career with Liverpool. But again, you're kind of clogging up that midfield, pushing more players in there. Where's everybody going to play? They've brought in another forward as well, so it's just going to be an interesting dynamic to see where everybody fits in that kind of position to where the LA Galaxy are going to try to go formation-wise, who gets more playing time, who needs rest when. They've brought in a lot of high-profile players, and now all of a sudden they have to try to get that all to coalesce. And you add another one in there with Jong. And it'll be interesting to see where that works out. Another one that was brought in that I am absolutely against is Ashley Cole, simply because of the statements that he made. You don't come into MLS and say, I didn't want to come here a year ago because I wasn't ready to basically sit on the beach and retire and collect a paycheck. But now apparently he is, because it's the only paycheck that anybody's willing to really give him, as well as some playing time. I understand LA's mentality behind it, because I am not one of these people that thinks the MLS can only bring in high-profile players in an attacking position, because I supported the idea of bringing in David Beckham, despite the fact that your average fan couldn't understand it once he got on the field, because they're like, well, where are the goals? I thought this was some high-profile soccer player and he's not scoring. Well, David Beckham was never a scorer. He was always a pinpoint passer. He could put the ball on a dime. He could cross it anywhere on the field. He was a good dribbler. He was a field general, but everybody else couldn't understand why you bring in somebody who's not going to be putting goals in by the bucket load. If LA thinks that they needed that piece and he was the best player available to them to fill a left back role, then so be it. But I don't like the idea of bringing in this player, because every single player, the high profile player anyway, from Beckham to Gerrard to Pirlo to Lampard, they all said the same thing after their first year in MLS, that it was a lot tougher than they ever expected it to be, whether it be the travel or just the style of play. Now you've got a player who has openly said that he doesn't think anything of the style of play in MLS, and he's going to come in right away and all of a sudden be expected to produce from a left back role, whether it's offensively going forward or defensively, which has always been kind of an issue. And to me, that is not the kind of image that the league needs right now, because they're trying to get away from this retirement league mentality. You have somebody who had openly called MLS a retirement league coming in now and being expected to make a bit of an impact defensively, if nothing else, for the LA Galaxy, and I just don't like the way that that all meshes. One other thing, Liverpool kind of be held up to it by Alex Teixeira. Not Alex Teixeira, but Shaktar. I'm kind of glad that that one didn't go through, unless some last-minute kind of thing happened under the table. But basically, there was nothing being reported, so it's pretty much guaranteed that that will not happen, maybe in the summer. But I didn't like the way that it all happened to begin with. Shaktar basically made Liverpool come up with two deals and then said, no, you're going to at least have to double what you just gave us, or maybe even more. Once a club does that, to me, you cut off all ties. If you're not willing to deal in good faith and kind of work based on what was given, I mean, if Liverpool just kind of gave a token offer that was incredibly embarrassing on the low end, then I can understand that. But Shakhtar basically is trying to just make do with the fact that somebody was interested in one of the players. They're saying, well, we're going to get this much money, otherwise you don't get him. Well, fine. This player I do not believe is going to make or break Liverpool in terms of trying to make the top four, trying to do something in the Capital One Cup, trying to get something done in the Europa League, any of that, any aspirations that they still have remaining. I do not believe Alex Teixeira would have made that big of a difference. Maybe he would end up being a great player, maybe not. We'll have to see coming forward. Maybe Liverpool opens up the purse strings a little bit in the summer, but for now, I'm glad that they did not acquiesce to a ridiculous demand of doubling whatever the original offer was, because I don't think it would have been worth it. I don't know that it's worth it really to anybody. If somebody comes to you, gives you an offer, and then you come around and say, well, you better double that. To me, that's just ridiculous kind of negotiation tactics. That is the view from the Midwest. What are your views on the topics? Where do you stand on the MLS versus USL kind of argument? Local team already here versus potential team that is in the future, that kind of deal. What do you think about some of the transfer dealings that went down, regardless of whether they're the ones that I discussed or some of the other ones that are there as well? Comment, rate, and subscribe. Give us a like, whether on YouTube or Facebook. But until the next time, I'll see you then.